Several years ago, I tested one of these Cammus Windbooster iRound gauges, and I actually found that it was incredibly well made, had a pretty good user interface, and a very robust set of parameters it could pull from OBD, as well as having the ability to have some analog inputs. I unfortunately lost the remote from my first one, which controls all of the programming. Reached out to them, and they're like, well, we have a new revision, so do you want to test that one? I said, sure. They sent me this, and I found the remote for the first one. But either way, today we're going to go over the revision 2 iRound gauge installation and setup in my Fiat 124 Lusso, and we'll see how this ends up going. Right off the bat, I have to say, this is a little different because it has an OBD2 pass-through. I'm not exactly sure how they accomplished that, but anyway, that feeds into this here module. And then we have IO1 and IO2. IO2 is for the analog sensor, which is optional, and it does actually still interface through USB-C, at least the connector USB-C. I'm guessing it's not actually that for protocol, but also shows Bluetooth, so maybe we'll have to see if we can pair to this thing for some sort of application down the road too. But other than that, I have to say the actual product and build quality seems exactly identical to the first gen iRound. Well, it defaults to boost, and it seems like it works, so that's good. But I do want to see if I can get a couple other readings on here as well. Alright, what I've noticed is the sampling rate goes down by a factor of 2 when you add a second gauge. So, although I like having air-fuel ratio, I think I might drop it back down to just boost. This particular car does not seem to have an oil temperature gauge, but you can see the sampling rate is not great. Alright, so on my car, the most useful parameters I found were water temperature, intake temperature, which is what the bottom one's set on now. Boost actually did not seem to speed up in the refresh rate when I put it down to a single gauge, so I'm not sure how useful that actually is, because the refresh time seems like it's a couple of seconds. I don't know, we'll see. Alright, so before I finally install it, which this has a pliable metal shapeable form, so it's actually pretty easy to shape it to where you want to put it. I'm thinking about either right up here on my dash or move my phone mount and probably put it over here. I do think there's enough range of motion front to back in this pliable mount, but not side to side. And there's also a microphone for my hands-free right there. So I'm not positive where I'm going to put it yet. All the driving I did today, I just had it sitting kind of down here, and that's okay, but it's really not ideal. It does also cover up some like seatbelt warnings and things like that. So anyway, where I'm gonna mount it doesn't matter at all to you, I'm sure, but it does at least have a few working functions, and the overall refresh rate, I would say, on the boost is probably 1/2 to 1 second, so 1 hertz or 2 hertz. It's not terrible, and honestly, for just kind of monitoring boost, it's good enough. But if you were doing tuning over the road or something like that, this is definitely not responsive enough. I don't know why, but the gauge is very responsive today. If it ends up staying like that, this thing is actually a viable boost gauge. Huh. We'll do the full drive and see if it stays responsive the whole time. Yeah, it stayed responsive the whole time, so pretty happy about that actually. I feel much better about sticking something to the dash that behaves just like an analog gauge. There's my final, oh, nope, no copyright. There's my final location. So it's well within view, and it's at a little bit of a turn down angle, but it's actually better for glare this way. You can see my IATs are way high because the car's been parked hot, but I'm pretty happy with how it all turned out. Everything looks just fine with the door shut and everything. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really happy, and I don't know why, but the refresh rate of the gauge went way up and it stayed good after the initial first round. So it at least works well in my Fiat 124. I'm not sure if it'll work well for your applications too, but honestly, I'm pretty happy to have a boost and IAT gauge, so good enough.